Hey everybody, it's Woodrow from 11 O'Clock Comics, and we are going to look through this month's previews catalog. This would be April 2023 for books that will mainly be hitting store shelves in June or later. It's a bit later than normal in the month to do one of these videos, but hey, better late than never, right? You've still got plenty of time, at least 4 or 5 days to finalize your orders, so hopefully after you watch this video, you'll still come away with a few extra gems to throw into your list for things. We're going to start off, as always, with Image Comics. And up first is Savage Dragon number 267. Now, if you all are regular listeners of the pod, you know that I am not a regular reader of Savage Dragon. But I do like to dip my toes in every now and then, usually around some kind of bigger event or anniversary situation. And we all know that Vince B. reads this regularly, but Dap and I tend to veer in and then veer back out. So it's been a few years since I actively read Savage Dragon, but every time I have read it, it's been fun. So I don't know why I don't read it continuously. And we've got a 30th anniversary wedding special coming at us, and it's a 100-page spectacular to boot. One of the things I definitely appreciate about Eric Larson is that he does treat his fans well. I think he always gives you those extra bits to try and make it feel like your dollar is worth it, particularly around these these bigger issues. And I'm down for it. So I'm looking forward to revisiting that world for the first time in a while. Moving on, you guys know that I adore Jeff Lemire, and certainly everything that he and Andrea Sorrentino have done together up to this point. They have really devoted a lot of time the last few years on this Bone Orchard mythos, which is this interconnected world of horror stories. And we've got their latest effort here in Bone Orchard Tenement number 1. It's a 10-issue series, and they have never let me down to this point, so I don't know why I would think that they're not going to deliver again this time. Scotty and artist Brett Bean are back with another issue of I Hate Fairyland, number 6. They were on a bit of a hiatus after the first arc of this second volume wrapped up. And it's been terrific. I think it hasn't skipped a beat. I was curious how the book would feel without Scotty drawing it. And while I would prefer him to draw the book, I understand that he's got other things going on. But I think Bean has been a very apt successor to him. And I think definitely, to Bean's credit, has adapted his own visual style to try and seem very copacetic with what Scotty gave us in the first volume. So that continues to be worthy of your dollars. We've got the final issue of The Ambassadors, number 6 of 6, written by Mark Miller. For those that don't recall, this miniseries is a bit different than a lot of Miller miniseries in that he's got a different artist doing each issue. And it is a murderer's row of amazing artists involved. And I think aptly, of course, I'm a bit skewed here given my adoration for this gentleman, but I love that they're finishing up the series with Teo Scalera on art. He is, to my mind, one of the greatest artists of his generation, and also a friend, so very excited to see this wrap up. I've read the first 2 issues, and it's been a hoot, as usual. I'm generally a fan of Miller's work, so no surprise there, but I think this series is certainly delivering so far. We've also got the conclusion of Jerry Duggan and Scott Koblish's very silly send-up on Monster Comics called The Giant Cockjew, number 3 of 3. This was a web-based, I think, behind a paywall series before it was in print. I didn't read it in that form, but I heard an interview with Duggan talking about that. But either way, I read the first issue, and it's very, very silly. It's sophomore. It's the kind of thing that when you were like 11 years old and you would be able to sneak onto your cable box, if you're old enough to remember cable boxes, and catch like a Porky's movie, an R-rated movie that had like nudity and body humor before you were, supposed to be watching it, and it was just very titillating. It's that kind of thing by design. So humor is very subjective. This isn't going to be for everybody, but I think it's fun, and it is what it is. It's certainly not taking itself seriously, and it wraps up, like I said here, with this issue. we've got a pair of books, Arcade Kings number 2 of 5 and Black Cloak number 6. Arcade Kings is written and drawn by Dylan Burnett, who I've known for a long time as an artist. And this is, at least from my memory, the first foray of him into being a writer too. And Black Cloak, of course, is Kelly Thompson's big jump into creator-owned comics. And you know we at 11 O'Clock Comics are huge fans of Kelly. She is a former guest of the show. We had a great time with talking to her back then. She and Meredith McLaren have been building this really interesting fantasy universe where it's essentially a detective police procedural, but set in a world of high magic and high fantasy. So far so good on that, and I'm enjoying both series after having read Arcade Kings number 1 this past week. If you've listened to recent shows, you know that Dap and I continue to love I Hate This Place, aka F This Place, written by Kyle Starks with art by Artyom Topolin and colors by Lee Lowridge. So this is the next issue, number 9, in this ongoing saga of craziness. And speaking of issue number 9s, we've got Kaya number 9, which is written and drawn by Wes Craig. It's been fun. I think that Wes was very nervous about this being his follow-on to the nearly decade-long run he put into The Amazing Deadly Class with Rick Remender. And it's also his first big foray into writing his own book. He's done a bit like of anthology stuff where he's written some stories. But so far, so good. I think that it's a slow build, but I do think that I've come to really care about the lead characters, and his art, as always, sings. Of course, we're going to continue with Image. We've got a twofer here on this page. We've got Local Man number 5 by our boy, our homie, our fourth chair, Tony Fleece, and his buddy Tim Seeley. I would think you don't need me to tell you about Local Man at this point because we've talked about it at every iteration, from its germination as an idea to its pre-launch to now that it's coming out. So hopefully you're reading it and enjoying it as much as we are. And then at the bottom of the page, we've got Love Everlasting, which I just spoke about a episode or two, so maybe a week or two back in the archives, how much I enjoyed catching up on that series. It's romance comics meet the Twilight Zone with a very twisted hook, and Tom King and Elsa Chartier are crushing it on that, and that too is in the middle of an arc, but I'm trying to be a bit more comprehensive with my walkthrough this month since it's a bit later coming at you, and I couldn't not at least call that one to your attention. We've got the final issue 6 of 6 for The Magic Order Volume 4. You have known me to sing the praises of Mark Millar's Magic Order at every turn, and this particular arc has been drawn by D.K. Ruwan, and it's been beautiful. I really enjoy this world and hope that we haven't seen the end of it. And I believe this is the last of the Image stuff, another twofer. Phantom Road number 4, speaking of the aforementioned Jeff Lemire, you guys know I'm here for almost anything Jeff does, and this is his book he's doing right now with Gabriel Hernandez-Walta and Jordi Belair. We've gotten, or I've read, I should say, 1 issue so far, and I think that knowing Jeff, it's going to build into quite a crescendo here at this point in the series. And then, last but certainly not least, Saga number 66. I love that the Saga solicits are so tiny. It's kind of a flex if you think about it, because I think Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples understand that they put out one of the best books in comics, period, end of story, and they don't really need to sell it. And I would agree with them. This continues to be one of those books that's so good, but we're so used to it being good that nobody talks about it anymore, and that's a damn shame because it is phenomenal. We are finally moving on from the Image Comics section, and if I'm not mistaken, we've probably got less things for the rest of the catalog to highlight than we did in Image. It's just that kind of period for me where I think Image is doing so many things that I think are on point across genres that I'm just finding so much there that the rest of the catalog isn't quite reeling me in as much. But, these things are cyclical. But moving on to Boom, we've got Once Upon a Time at the End of the World, number 6 of 15. This is the first issue of the second arc of 3 in this post-apocalyptic world surrounded around 2 lifelong friends, or maybe now enemies, depending, Mezzi and Maceo. It's written again by Jason Aaron, who's, of course, writing the entire 15-issue series, but he's switching up artists for each of the 3 chapters, and we've got Leila Del Duca taking over art chores. Some of you may not know Leila's work, but I can assure you that she is quite accomplished and is particularly good at drawing the female form, so stay tuned there. Jumping over to Dynamite, and you guys know me well enough to know that if I'm talking about Dynamite, it's probably because I'm bringing up Darkwing Duck. I don't read much Dynamite right now, but Darkwing Duck has been a treat for me. Pure nostalgia bomb. It feels like I'm reading a script and cell animation for an episode of the cartoon, a cartoon that means a lot to me and was near and dear to me when it was coming out back in the day. Titan has some interesting things going on this month, and I always love to see that. Up first is Love Kills, which is written and drawn by Danilo Beyruth. I actually met Danilo for the first time at New York Comic Con last year, but I was fortunate to get a commission from him through his rep before I knew him, or really any of his published work. I just saw some of his commissions. A number of years ago, he did an absolutely breathtaking domino for me. I know, shocker, right? I got a domino commission. But this looks like a lot of fun, and, I would encourage you to Google Danilo if you're not quite sure from these first 2 images what his line works like, but this is, I think, right up his alley. It's a vampire story, so again, on brand for me. I love vampire stories, and it should be great. It's set in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Danilo is Brazilian, and I'm just it's a bit of a leap of faith, of course, because I don't know how Danilo is as a storyteller, because I've only seen him draw for other writers, but I've got faith in Titan. I think when Titan brings outside of the U.S. comics over and translates them, it's got a very high hit rate, and so I'm pretty excited about what's to come of this. And then, in keeping with Titan, we've got another featured item. It's Noir Burlesque, and this is written and drawn by Enrico Marini. Enrico is interesting. He is a god among art collectors. He's one of those people that, like, if you can get a commission from him, it's many, many thousands of dollars, like Jim Lee level prices. And I know that surprises some American collectors because the name isn't a household name, but he's very well known and respected in Europe. And I have a few graphic novels, hardcover collections of some of his better known works that were translated here, and they're all a blast. He's just an impeccable draftsman, just gorgeous everything. He's great at drawing everything. I mean, but I love the idea of him doing a 1950s detective story, and I'm sure it's going to be a blast. It's a month where Terry Moore is putting out a Parker Girls issue, so it's a month where I'm going to remind you that Terry Moore is putting out a Parker Girls issue. We've got issue number 8, and this has just been such a wonderful return to form for me as a massive Terry fan, and also most particularly a fan of Strangers in Paradise. This feels like the best of SIP, and it also feels like Terry's energized to tell this story, so it's just been a real treat every month. I don't think I'll get used to Dark Horse being in the back part of the previews catalog. That's really weird to me, but that is the reality these days. And you've got a double take here. You've got the Great British Bump Off number 3 by John Allison and Max Sarin, longtime collaborators. They spent many years together doing Giant Days, and now they're doing this. Dap just spoke about the first issue on last week's episode of the podcast. I haven't read the first issue yet, but plan to this week. It's pretty, this is obviously a take on the Great British Bake Off. So if you're a fan of that or other kinds of cooking shows, I've heard that you'll really find this quite funny and enjoyable. But if you're not a fan or familiar with these, quote unquote reality shows and cooking competitions, you probably will. This probably isn't your book. So your mileage may vary, but I am a fan of both comics and those kinds of shows, so I can't wait to dig in. And then right below that is Matt Kint's Hairball. I spoke about Hairball number 1 2 or 3 weeks ago on the pod, and it's really weird. Like, it's weird in a great way, but very, very strange. It's horror surrounded by or centered around a strange cat that has very odd abilities, and there's some very grotesque sort of body horror going on. Like I said, it's odd, and it's very much a fantastical horror story and very graphic. So be forewarned is forearmed, but that's certainly right up my alley, particularly when it's written by Kint, who you all know I adore his writing. Let's keep with the foreign import vibe with Magnetic. And it's been a minute since Magnetic had multiple solicits in a month that I was excited for. And that's not to besmirch Magnetic. It's just cyclical, right? They only publish so many things per year. But what we have here is My Friend Toby by Gregory Panaccione. He's an Italian creator, as you might have guessed. And he did a book called A Sea of Love a few years ago. I loved that book. I gave a very long review of it back when it came out. You can check the EOC archives if you don't remember that episode to see what I thought of it. But it's great to see him back at work. And this is a book surrounding a doggo named Toby. So I know this is one that Dap certainly is going to be vibing with as well. And maybe we can even melt Vince's cold heart if he's willing to try it. And then Magnetic has got another pair of books I'm excited for. Mezcal, which is Mezkal by Kevin Stevens, and Convoy, another Kevin Stevens book. Obviously, he didn't just do both of these books, but as is often the case, when we are exposed to a new European or South American creator, we generally get a chance to see some of their accomplished back catalog as well, and that's what's going on here. Magnetic does a wonderful job not only translating foreign books, but also in terms of the quality of the production. They're always very well done hardcovers, and that's the case here. Convoy is a 132-page hardcover, and Mezcal is a 192-page hardcover. Magnetic has as high a hit rate for me as just about any publisher. They have a very limited production catalog schedule, but when they do put something out, particularly when it's a translated import, it's almost always a total banger. So, and then our last highlight of the main catalog is Lore Olympus, Volume 4. One thing I will say is kind of neat that Random House is doing is they're putting these out simultaneously, soliciting them as hardcovers and softcovers, which is pretty cool. This is pretty straightforward stuff. I've enjoyed the web comic. I was reading it on Webtoons for some time, and then I moved over to hardcovers after the first hardcover was such a well-done product. I decided just to wait patiently for each subsequent hardcover, so we're getting Volume 4 here. I haven't read Volume 3 yet, although it's sitting here on my stack, and it's just a really well-done pantheonic mythology-based kind of like soap opera, but Rachel Smythe has been doing an awesome job with it for now quite a few years, so can't wait to get another big chunk of it into my eye holes. And that will do it for our previews walkthrough. I hope there were at least a few things that I highlighted that sparked your curiosity. And as always, I'd love to hear what you think I missed in the catalog, because somehow, some way, in spite of reading through these catalogs like 3 or 4 times in a month before I finalize my order, there are always books that end up being phenomenal that I either ignored or didn't even remember seeing, and then I have to go back and order them later. It's a whole thing. So you guys could save me a lot of time and effort if you could just let me know right now what you think I missed but should be ordering. And I'll likely throw it onto my order. So anyway, enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll be back very soon.